My mother and sister threatened to destroy my Hindu wedding if I didn't convert it to Christian. When I refused, my sister had a public meltdown, destroyed a bridal boutique, and got in trouble with the police. Now I'm happily married abroad with a family, and she's still paying for her obsession. I am getting married to my fiancé Raj in a couple of months. We are having a traditional, lavish Indian wedding, which has been a dream of mine since childhood. I grew up in a mixed household. My father is Hindu and my mother is Christian. While we celebrated both religions growing up, I've always felt more connected to my father's Hindu traditions. My sister Sarah is also getting married around the same time. She identifies more with our mother's Christian faith and is planning a traditional Christian wedding. Recently, Sarah approached me, expressing concerns that our weddings being close together might overshadow hers, especially since mine is more extravagant and involves multiple days of celebration. Sarah asked if I could either tone down my wedding, consider postponing it, or even make it a fully Christian ceremony to balance things out. She believes that having two weddings so close together, with one being significantly grander, would take attention away from hers and create unnecessary stress for our family, who will have to juggle both events. I told her that I understand her concerns, but I've been planning this wedding for over a year, and it means a lot to me to have it the way I've always imagined. I also pointed out that our cultural backgrounds are different, and both weddings will be special in their own ways. Additionally, postponing my wedding would be a huge inconvenience and financial burden for us, given the extensive preparations and bookings already in place. Our wedding dates are 3 weeks apart. We have separate guest lists, but there is some overlap with close family and mutual friends. My mother is siding with Sarah and believes I should change my wedding to a fully Christian ceremony, or at least incorporate significant Christian elements. My father, on the other hand, supports my decision and believes that both of us should have the weddings we want. Sarah was very upset and accused me of being selfish and not caring about her feelings. She thinks I'm prioritizing my wedding over our family's well-being. My mother has started going overboard, constantly criticizing my decision and even threatening not to attend my wedding unless I change it to a Christian ceremony. She's been calling extended family members to persuade them to side with Sarah and boycott my wedding if I don't comply. Now I'm feeling torn. I don't want to hurt my sister or cause any family rift, but I also don't want to sacrifice my dream wedding. Also, I'm not in her bridal party or any other things, but her wedding is mine. I also inherited a lot from my father as he was Hindu, and he gave it to me as I was as well. I gave my sister 40% of what he gave me, and no one is helping with wedding costs. Am I the AITA for telling my sister that I won't change my wedding? Update. So I went to try and talk to my sister, but she didn't let me in unless I told her I would have a Christian ceremony. I declined and left. My mom called me later on telling me I am a piece of shut tea for ruining my sister's big day. Honestly, I would have had my wedding months ago, but when a priest checked my and my fiancé's horoscope, we did not have a date until a year later. I have talked to all my vendors, and though they don't do password protection, they agreed to it. Later on, my mom wanted to change my bridal lehenga and my party decor. Luckily, they didn't let her. Also, my wedding had all of our distant relatives as well as close family wedding. My side alone had 1,734 people. Together, we had a guest list of 3,600. My sister tried to get everyone, but she didn't try and coordinate that much. She just sent the invite and told people to spread the word. All my guests are being accommodated by me and my in-laws. My inheritance included a huge castle mansion sort of thing which has 100 rooms. I know it's large, but it is really old, and the rest have been booked into resorts by me and my in-laws. Update 2. After all the drama with my sister and mother, I decided to go to the bridal shop to make some changes to my wedding attire. Initially, I had booked a white lehenga due to pressure from my mom, but I wanted to change it to a traditional red one. I went to the shop with my future mother-in-law and sister-in-law to make the changes. While we were at the shop, my mother and sister showed up unexpectedly. My mother started creating a scene, calling me ungrateful and disrespectful for changing the lehenga color. Sarah, seeing the red lehenga, lost her temper. She tried to persuade the shop assistant to switch it back to the white one, but when that didn't work, she completely lost control. A few days later, Sarah went back to the shop alone and demanded they change my red lehenga to white. When the shop assistant refused, Sarah went berserk. She grabbed a bottle of dye and started spilling it over all the lehengas in the shop, screaming that if she couldn't have her way, no one else would. The shop staff called the police, and when they arrived, Sarah threatened them, saying she would make sure they regretted arresting her. Sarah was taken into custody for property damage and threatening a police officer. Her boyfriend then contacted me, demanding that I pay for her bail and give up my wedding, saying that all this happened because of me. I refused, standing my ground that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my plans or finances for her irrational behavior. As a result, Sarah had to cancel her wedding and sell their car to cover the bail money. Her boyfriend, unable to handle the drama and financial strain, broke up with her. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone flooded with messages from extended family members. Most were asking about Sarah's arrest, while others were demanding I help her. I ignored them all and focused on damage control for my wedding. I called the bridal shop to check on the situation. The manager informed me that the damage was extensive. Sarah had destroyed over 20 lehengas worth hundreds of thousands of rupees. They were pressing full charges and wouldn't drop them even if I offered to pay. My future mother-in-law called shortly after, suggesting we visit a different shop for backup options. She'd already contacted 3 other boutiques that could rush order a lehenga if needed. We scheduled appointments for that afternoon. As I got ready, my father's brother arrived at my door. Uncle Arjun had always been neutral in family disputes, so I let him in. He sat down heavily and explained that my mother had been calling all the relatives, spinning stories about how I'd orchestrated Sarah's arrest to steal her wedding thunder. I showed him the police report and security footage the shop had sent me. His face darkened as he watched Sarah destroying property while screaming threats. He shook his head and promised to set the record straight with the family. After he left, I drove to meet my in-laws at the first boutique. The shop owner, Mrs. Patel, greeted us warmly and showed us several stunning red lehengas. I was examining a particularly beautiful piece when my phone rang. It was the detective handling Sarah's case. He informed me that Sarah had made bail, but violated the restraining order the shop had filed by driving past it multiple times that morning. Security cameras caught her taking photos of the storefront. They'd arrested her again, and this time bail would be significantly higher. I thanked him for the update and returned to lehenga shopping, trying to push the family drama from my mind. My future sister-in-law, Priya, held up a gorgeous lehenga with intricate gold embroidery. It was perfect, even more beautiful than my original choice. We placed the order with rush delivery, and Mrs. Patel assured us she'd personally oversee every detail. As we celebrated with tea and sweets, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "You've destroyed this family. Don't expect any of us at your wedding." I showed the message to my mother-in-law, who immediately called my mother. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but it was clear my mother-in-law wasn't holding back. She reminded my mother that I'd generously shared my inheritance with Sarah, planned my wedding according to religious customs, and had done nothing wrong. The call ended with my mother hanging up on her. Over the next few days, I threw myself into wedding preparations. The caterers confirmed the menu for 3,600 guests. The decorators sent updated designs incorporating more traditional elements, and the priest confirmed all the ceremony details. I personally called each vendor to update security protocols. Now they required both a password and photo ID for any changes. My cousin Mira visited to offer support. She revealed that my mother had been telling relatives I'd bribed the police to arrest Sarah. Mira had defended me, causing a rift with her own parents who sided with my mother. I felt terrible that my wedding was dividing the family, but Mira assured me that the truth would eventually come out. She also mentioned that Sarah's ex-boyfriend had been telling people about Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior in the months leading up to her arrest. A week passed without major incident. I was reviewing seating arrangements when my father's sister, Aunt Kamala, arrived with several other relatives. My heart sank, expecting another confrontation. Instead, they'd come to offer support. They'd seen the security footage Uncle Arjun had shared and were appalled by Sarah's behavior. Aunt Kamala handed me a gift, a beautiful antique necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. She said I deserved to wear it at my wedding, regardless of what my mother said. The touching moment was interrupted by loud banging on my door. Through the peephole, I saw my mother with Sarah, who was apparently out on bail again. I didn't open the door, instead calling building security. They arrived quickly and asked them to leave. My mother screamed that I was a disgrace to the family, that I'd stolen Sarah's happiness. Sarah added that she'd make sure my wedding was ruined one way or another. Security escorted them out, but their threats lingered. I immediately called my lawyer. Yes, I'd had to hire one, who advised documenting everything and filing for a restraining order. The other relatives who'd witnessed the scene agreed to provide statements. That evening, Raj returned from a business trip. I broke down crying as I told him everything. He held me close and promised we'd get through this together. His family had already hired additional security for all wedding events. The restraining order was granted within days. Both my mother and Sarah were legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or any wedding venue. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, also ordered them to cease all contact with wedding vendors. I felt relieved but heartbroken. This wasn't how I'd imagined my wedding journey. My father's cousin, who owned a security company, offered to provide discreet security for free. He was furious about my mother's behavior and wanted to ensure my safety. I gratefully accepted. He assigned a team to monitor all wedding venues starting immediately. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. The hotel where many guests would stay called to inform me that someone had tried to cancel the room blocks. Thanks to our new security measures, they'd refused, but it was concerning. I spent hours on the phone with various vendors, confirming every detail. The security company my cousin provided had already caught 2 more attempts at sabotage. Someone had called the caterer claiming to be me, trying to change the entire menu to beef dishes, knowing full well that would be deeply offensive at a Hindu wedding. Another call to the transportation company tried to cancel all the buses we'd arranged for guests. My future father-in-law suggested we move the wedding to their family's private estate outside the city. It was more secure and could easily accommodate all our guests. After discussing with Raj and the priest, we agreed. The venue change would be challenging, but safety was paramount. We spent 3 days relocating everything. The decorator visited the new venue, the caterer inspected the kitchens, and we arranged additional accommodations in the nearby town. During this chaos, I received a call from Sarah's ex-boyfriend, Marcus. He apologized for his earlier behavior and wanted to warn me. Sarah had been talking about getting revenge and had been in contact with some questionable people. He didn't know details but thought I should be aware. I thanked him and immediately informed our security team. The wedding was now 2 weeks away. Invitations had been updated with the new venue, and most guests had confirmed attendance. Surprisingly, many relatives who'd initially sided with my mother had changed their minds after learning the truth. Uncle Arjun had been instrumental in sharing the real story, including documentation of Sarah's arrest and the restraining orders. One evening, while reviewing final preparations with my wedding planner, she mentioned something odd. A woman had been asking questions about the wedding at various vendor shops in town, claiming to be my cousin. The descriptions matched my mother. Security footage from one shop confirmed it. She'd been trying to find out which vendors we'd switched to after the initial sabotage attempts. We increased security measures again. Every vendor now had photos of my mother and Sarah with strict instructions not to engage with them. The security team would patrol all vendor locations in the days leading up to the wedding. It felt like planning a covert operation rather than a celebration, but I had no choice. A week before the wedding, things escalated dramatically. The original bridal shop called. Someone had thrown a brick through their window with a note threatening worse if they testified in Sarah's upcoming trial. Police suspected Sarah but couldn't prove it. The shop owner, though shaken, remained committed to pressing charges. That same day, 3 different relatives reported receiving calls from my mother, crying about how I'd ruined the family. She claimed I'd turned everyone against her and Sarah, that I'd destroyed Sarah's life over a minor disagreement. Most relatives saw through her manipulation, but it was exhausting dealing with the constant drama. My mehendi ceremony was scheduled for 3 days before the wedding. We'd kept the location secret, sharing it only with confirmed guests on the day of the event. The celebration was beautiful. Dozens of women gathered to have intricate henna designs applied, while musicians played traditional songs. My mother-in-law had arranged for the best mehendi artists in the region. Halfway through the ceremony, security noticed a suspicious car circling the venue. They investigated and found Sarah's best friend, Cassandra, taking photos. She claimed she was just passing by, but security escorted her away. We later learned she'd been posting live updates on social media, likely feeding information to Sarah and my mother. The Sangeet, our musical celebration, was the next evening. Despite everything, it was magical. Raj's family had prepared elaborate dance performances, and even my stressed mind couldn't help but enjoy the festivities. My father's relatives showered me with blessings and gifts, making up for my mother's absence with their overwhelming love and support. However, the joy was short-lived. The next morning, 2 days before the wedding, I woke to find my car tires slashed. Security footage showed a figure in dark clothing, but they couldn't make out identifying features. Police took it seriously given the restraining orders, but without clear evidence, they couldn't arrest anyone. We knew it was likely Sarah or someone she'd hired. That afternoon, while getting my final lehenga fitting, Mrs. Patel pulled me aside. Someone had called claiming their daughter was getting married and needed a red lehenga urgently. The caller had asked detailed questions about my order. Mrs. Patel, suspicious, had refused to provide information. The caller had become angry, accidentally revealing they knew about my wedding before hanging up. The day before my wedding, tension was at its peak. Security reported multiple attempts to breach the estate's perimeter. Local police increased patrols in the area. Despite everything, preparations continued. The mandap was decorated beautifully. The kitchens were busy preparing feast after feast, and guests began arriving from across the country. That evening, during the haldi ceremony where turmeric paste is applied for good luck, we received word that Sarah had been arrested again. She'd been caught trying to hire someone to disrupt the wedding. The person she'd approached turned out to be an undercover officer investigating another case. She'd offered him money to cause a scene during the ceremony. This time, bail was denied due to her repeated violations. My mother, learning about Sarah's arrest, called every relative present at the haldi. Those who answered reported she was hysterical, blaming me for setting a trap for Sarah. She claimed I'd orchestrated everything to humiliate them. Most relatives hung up on her, tired of the drama. The few who listened tried to reason with her, pointing out that Sarah's actions were her own responsibility. That night, I barely slept. Security remained vigilant, and Raj's family members took turns keeping watch. My phone was full of messages, most supportive, some still trying to guilt me into helping Sarah. I turned it off, focusing on the joy of marrying Raj rather than the family chaos. My wedding day dawned bright and clear. I woke early for the traditional preparations. As the makeup artist worked on my elaborate look, my mother-in-law presented me with a stunning jewelry set that had been in their family for generations. My father's sisters helped me into the gorgeous red lehenga, tears of joy in their eyes. The Bharat, Raj's procession, arrived with great fanfare. Hundreds of guests danced as he made his way to the venue on a decorated horse. Security discreetly managed the crowds, and everything proceeded smoothly. As I prepared for my entrance, Aunt Kamala whispered that she'd heard my mother was at a relative's house nearby, still trying to convince people to leave the wedding. No one was listening. The ceremony itself was perfect. As the priest chanted sacred mantras, Raj and I completed each ritual with joy and reverence. When we took our 7 sacred steps around the fire, I felt the weight of the past months lift from my shoulders. We were married, despite every attempt to stop us. During the reception, with over 3,000 guests celebrating, I learned the full extent of what our security had prevented. They'd stopped 3 separate attempts to disrupt the ceremony, people my mother had convinced to protest the wedding, a fake police officer trying to claim there was an emergency, and even someone attempting to tamper with the sound system during crucial moments. As the evening progressed, relative after relative approached to congratulate us and express their disgust at my mother and Sarah's behavior. Many apologized for initially believing their lies. Uncle Arjun made a speech about the importance of truth and supporting family members who choose their own path with respect and tradition. The revelation came during the dinner service. Marcus, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, arrived with 2 police officers. He'd been wearing a wire during his last conversations with Sarah, gathering evidence of her plans. The recordings clearly showed her attempting to hire people to sabotage my wedding, discussing ways to ruin me, and even mentioning physical harm. The officers assured me this would ensure she faced serious jail time. As our guests enjoyed the elaborate feast, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was my mother, using someone else's phone. The message was short. I have no daughter. Instead of pain, I felt relief. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. The rest of the reception was pure celebration. Raj and I danced, laughed, and enjoyed every moment with the family who truly supported us. My father's relatives had become my rock, showing me that family isn't just about blood, but about those who stand by you. As the evening wound down, my new mother-in-law pulled me aside. She'd been in contact with a lawyer who specialized in harassment cases. With all the evidence we'd collected, security footage, recordings, witness statements, we had an airtight case against both Sarah and my mother. She wanted to make sure I was protected going forward. The next morning, as Raj and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, we received one final update. Sarah had been charged with multiple counts of harassment, stalking, attempted destruction of property, and conspiracy to commit assault. The evidence was overwhelming. She faced years in prison. My mother, while not criminally charged, had been served with a permanent restraining order. As our car pulled away from the estate, I looked back at the venue where I'd married the love of my life despite every obstacle. My phone was full of messages from relatives sharing photos and videos of the beautiful ceremony. The family that mattered had stood by me, and justice had prevailed. 6 months later, I received a letter from Sarah in prison. She wrote about how she'd been receiving therapy and finally understood how wrong she'd been. She apologized for everything and said she didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted me to know she was working on herself. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter. Maybe one day, far in the future, healing could begin. My mother never reached out again. Relatives told me she'd moved to another city, telling people she had no children. It hurt, but I'd found my true family in Raj's wonderful parents and siblings, in my father's relatives who'd supported me, and in the new family Raj and I were building together. The wedding that was meant to be overshadowed became legendary in our community, not for the drama, but for the love and support that triumphed over hatred and manipulation. The vendors who'd stood by us referred many new clients, impressed by our grace under pressure. The security team my cousin provided had prevented a disaster, and I was forever grateful. As I write this, I'm preparing for a different kind of celebration. Raj and I are expecting our first child, and both our families, the one I chose and the one that chose me, are overjoyed. My mother-in-law is already planning the naming ceremony, and my father's sisters are knitting tiny clothes. Sometimes I think about Sarah and my mother, wondering if they ever found peace. But mostly, I focus on the beautiful life I've built with Raj, surrounded by people who truly love and support us. The wedding they tried so hard to destroy became the foundation of something stronger, a family built on respect, love, and truth. Looking back, I realized their attempts to ruin my happiness only made it clearer who truly deserved to be in my life. Every vendor who stood by us, every relative who saw through the lies, every security person who protected our celebration, they all became part of our story. A story that began with conflict, but ended with the greatest victory of all. A love that couldn't be destroyed, and a family that couldn't be broken. The letter from Sarah sat in my drawer for weeks before I finally decided what to do with it. I photocopied it and sent the original to my lawyer, just in case. That turned out to be the right decision, because 3 days later, my cousin Preeti called with disturbing news. She worked at the prison complex commissary and had overheard Sarah talking to another inmate about how the letter was part of her lawyer's strategy to show rehabilitation and get early release. I immediately forwarded this information to the prosecutor handling her case. They thanked me and said they'd add it to their files. It seemed Sarah hadn't changed at all. She was still trying to manipulate situations to her advantage. The prosecutor also mentioned that my mother had been visiting Sarah weekly and they'd been discussing something that had the guards concerned enough to monitor their conversations more closely. 2 weeks later, I was at a prenatal appointment when the receptionist handed me an envelope that had been delivered to the clinic. Inside was a photo of my ultrasound that I'd posted on social media for close friends and family, with red marker scribbled across it. The message was clear: someone was watching me. Hospital security reviewed their cameras and found a woman in a wig and sunglasses had dropped it off. The build matched my mother's. Raj insisted we hire a private investigator to supplement the security we already had. The PI, recommended by my father-in-law's business associate, was a former police detective named Sharma. Within days, he'd uncovered something troubling. My mother had been using a fake name to rent an apartment just 2 blocks from our home. She'd been there for over a month, watching our routines. We immediately filed a police report, but because she hadn't technically violated the restraining order distance requirement, they could only document it. Sharma suggested we vary our routines and install additional cameras. He also discovered she'd been attending the same prenatal yoga class as me under an assumed name, though she'd stopped coming after I'd mentioned feeling watched to the instructor. The next escalation came through an unexpected channel. My mother-in-law received a call from her jewelry store saying someone had tried to sell pieces that matched the family heirloom set she'd given me for the wedding. The person fled when asked for identification, but they'd captured clear footage. It was my mother, wearing a poor disguise. The jewelry was still safely in my possession, which meant she'd had replicas made. But why? Sharma's investigation revealed the answer. My mother had been showing the fake jewelry to distant relatives, claiming I'd sold her family heirlooms for money because Raj's business was failing. She was trying to turn the extended family against me with lies. Fortunately, most relatives were skeptical, especially since Raj's family business was publicly known to be thriving. One morning, I woke to find our garden destroyed. Every plant had been uprooted, including the sacred Tulsi plant my mother-in-law had gifted us for our new home. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that night. Police suspected someone had used a signal jammer, which suggested planning and possibly accomplices. The elderly neighbor mentioned seeing a van parked outside around midnight but hadn't thought much of it. Raj's family immediately stepped up security measures. His uncle, a retired military officer, personally supervised the installation of military-grade cameras with backup power systems. The security team was doubled, and we started varying their shifts randomly to prevent anyone from learning patterns. It felt like living in a fortress, but we had no choice with a baby on the way. The psychological warfare intensified. I started receiving packages at work: baby clothes cut into pieces, photos of cribs with red X marks through them, printouts of articles about pregnancy complications. HR got involved when one package contained a doll covered in fake blood. They banned all personal deliveries and stationed security at reception. My boss, understanding the situation, allowed me to work from home more often. During this time, Sarah's lawyer contacted me. He claimed Sarah wanted to make amends and had information about my mother's plans that I needed to know. My lawyer advised against any contact, but the persistent calls made me wonder what Sarah knew. The lawyer even showed up at Raj's office, trying to pressure him into convincing me to visit Sarah. Raj had security escort him out and filed a harassment complaint with the Bar Association. The turning point came when I was 7 months pregnant. I'd gone to the temple with my mother-in-law for a special blessing ceremony. As we were leaving, a woman approached claiming to be lost and asking for directions. While my mother-in-law was distracted helping her, another woman bumped into me hard, nearly knocking me down the temple steps. Security caught her, and it turned out to be one of Sarah's former cellmates who'd recently been released. The woman broke down under police questioning. My mother had paid her to accidentally cause me to fall, hoping to trigger complications with the pregnancy. The plan had been coordinated through Sarah, who was using her prison connections to help my mother. This revelation led to additional charges against Sarah, and finally gave police enough evidence to arrest my mother for conspiracy to commit assault. My mother's arrest made waves through the family. Some relatives who'd remained neutral finally understood the severity of the situation. Others, particularly from her side, accused me of fabricating evidence. The family WhatsApp groups became battlegrounds of accusations and counter-accusations. I left them all, focusing on my health and the baby. During my mother's bail hearing, shocking information emerged. She'd liquidated significant assets, including property she'd inherited from her parents, accumulating nearly 50 lakhs in cash. The prosecutor argued she was a flight risk, and bail was set extremely high. Unable to pay, she remained in custody. Her lawyer, probably paid in advance, kept filing appeals that were consistently denied. With both my mother and Sarah incarcerated, I thought we'd finally have peace. I was wrong. Their network was more extensive than we'd realized. Former friends of Sarah started showing up at places I frequented: the grocery store, the pharmacy, even my doctor's office. They wouldn't approach or violate the restraining order, but their presence was clearly meant to intimidate. Sharma discovered these women were being paid through a complex system. Money was being deposited into their accounts by someone using multiple fake identities. He traced some transactions to internet cafes, but the trail went cold. Someone with resources was funding this harassment campaign, and we suspected my mother had hidden money somewhere before her arrest. The stress was affecting my pregnancy. My doctor put me on partial bed rest after my blood pressure spiked. Raj took leave from work to be with me, and his family practically moved in to help. His sister Priya quit her job temporarily to ensure I was never alone. The support was overwhelming and exactly what I needed. One night, Raj's uncle intercepted someone trying to access our property through a construction site next door. The person escaped, but dropped a bag containing rope, duct tape, and a knife. Police took it extremely seriously, increasing patrols in our area. The investigation revealed the intruder had been studying our security patterns for weeks, noting when guards changed shifts. We decided to temporarily move to Raj's family estate outside the city. The move was kept secret, with only essential family members knowing our location. Even then, we used decoy cars and changed routes multiple times. It felt like a movie, but the threat was very real. The estate's security was impenetrable, with Raj's uncle's military connections ensuring professional protection. At the estate, I finally felt safe enough to relax. The remaining weeks of my pregnancy passed peacefully, though we maintained vigilance. Sharma continued investigating and discovered my mother had been corresponding with someone in Dubai who'd been wiring money to various accounts. The connection was unclear, but authorities in both countries were now involved. 2 weeks before my due date, we received intelligence that made everything click into place. Sarah had been cellmates with a woman whose brother specialized in harassment campaigns for hire. My mother had connected with him through Sarah, paying him to orchestrate everything from the destroyed garden to the intimidation tactics. He operated from Dubai, making it difficult for Indian authorities to reach him. However, his greed became his downfall. He'd been skimming from the money my mother sent, and when she found out from prison, she threatened to expose his other clients. He panicked and contacted authorities himself, offering information in exchange for immunity. His testimony revealed the full extent of my mother's plans, including a horrifying plot to kidnap my baby after birth and flee the country. The revelation sent shockwaves through both families. Even relatives who'd supported my mother were appalled. The police found fake passports and documents in a storage unit she'd rented, confirming the kidnapping plot. Additional charges were filed, ensuring she'd remain in prison for years. Sarah, realizing her role in facilitating this, finally seemed to understand the gravity of her actions. As my due date approached, security around the hospital was coordinated like a military operation. Raj's uncle worked with hospital administration to ensure only pre-approved staff could access my room. Every nurse, doctor, and cleaning staff member was vetted. It seemed excessive, but after everything we'd been through, no precaution was too much. The day I went into labor, the hospital went into lockdown mode. Security guards were posted at every entrance to the maternity ward. Raj never left my side, and his family formed a protective circle in the waiting room. Even through the pain of contractions, I felt safe knowing how many people were protecting us. Our daughter was born healthy and beautiful, with Raj's eyes and my smile. As I held her for the first time, all the months of stress and fear melted away. She was perfect, and she was safe. The family's joy was palpable, with even the security team smiling as they maintained their posts. We named her Arya, meaning noble and honorable, qualities we hoped she'd embody despite the circumstances of her birth. The first few weeks at home were carefully managed. Visitors were limited and thoroughly vetted. Every gift was inspected, every delivery scrutinized. It was exhausting, but necessary. Sharma maintained surveillance on prison communications and reported that both my mother and Sarah had gone silent, which worried us more than their previous schemes. When Arya was 6 weeks old, we received an unexpected legal notice. My mother was suing for grandparental rights, claiming I was denying her access to her grandchild due to a misunderstanding. Her new lawyer argued that the restraining order shouldn't apply to the baby since it was issued before Arya was born. It was a ridiculous claim, but we had to take it seriously. Our lawyer filed a comprehensive response, including all evidence of the harassment, assault attempts, and kidnapping plot. The judge not only dismissed her petition, but extended the restraining order to explicitly include Arya until she turned 18. My mother's lawyer withdrew from the case, likely realizing the extent of his client's actions. The legal victory was satisfying, but we couldn't let our guard down. Sharma discovered my mother had been trying to manipulate other inmates into contacting their outside connections for help. She'd become obsessed with the idea that Arya was rightfully hers, and that I'd stolen her grandchild. The prison psychiatrist diagnosed her with several personality disorders, though she refused treatment. As Arya grew, we slowly began to reclaim normalcy. Security remained, but became less obtrusive. We started attending family functions again, though always with precautions. The extended family had largely rallied around us, understanding the truth of the situation. Those who still doubted were politely but firmly excluded from our lives. When Arya was 4 months old, we received news that shook us. Sarah had been attacked in prison by another inmate she'd tried to recruit for my mother's schemes. She survived but was seriously injured. The investigation revealed she'd promised payment she couldn't deliver, leading to the assault. Even in prison, their manipulation had consequences. The attack seemed to finally break through Sarah's delusions. Her lawyer contacted us again, this time with a genuine request. Sarah wanted to provide testimony about my mother's broader network in exchange for a transfer to a minimum security facility. My lawyer advised cooperation, as it could help prevent future threats. Sarah's testimony was eye-opening. My mother had connections we hadn't imagined, people she'd manipulated over years who owed her favors or believed her lies about me. She'd been planning the harassment campaign long before my wedding, resentful of my relationship with our father and the inheritance I'd received. The wedding had simply been the catalyst for her existing rage. Armed with this information, authorities dismantled the network piece by piece. Several people were arrested for their roles in the harassment, though most had believed they were helping a wronged mother reconnect with her daughter. The man in Dubai was extradited and faced serious charges. Slowly, the threat diminished. By Arya's first birthday, we'd achieved something resembling normal life. The security team was reduced to a single discreet bodyguard, more precaution than necessity. The estate felt like a home rather than a fortress. We even managed to have a small celebration without incident, though we still carefully vetted every guest. My mother-in-law had become my rock through everything, showing me the maternal love I'd been denied. She often said that my mother's loss was her gain, that she couldn't have asked for a better daughter-in-law. Her support, along with Raj's unwavering love, had gotten me through the darkest moments. As I write this update, Arya is learning to walk, stumbling between furniture with determination that reminds me of myself. She's surrounded by love from Raj's family, and my father's relatives who've become our chosen family. The shadow of my mother and Sarah's actions still lingers, but it no longer defines our lives. We've learned that family isn't about blood, but about choice. Every person who stood by us, who protected us, who believed in us, they're our real family. The vendors who refused bribes, the security team who kept us safe, the relatives who saw through lies, they all played a part in our story. Looking at Arya's innocent face, I sometimes wonder if I'll ever tell her about her grandmother and aunt. For now, she knows only love and safety. When she's older, perhaps I'll explain how sometimes people we should trust most can hurt us deepest, but also how love and truth ultimately prevail. The journey from my wedding day to now has been harrowing, but it's also shown me strength I didn't know I possessed. My mother and Sarah tried to destroy my happiness at every turn, but instead, they only reinforced the bonds with those who truly matter. Their hatred created a fortress of love around my family that no amount of manipulation could penetrate. As Raj often says, we didn't just survive their attempts to break us, we thrived despite them. Our marriage, tested by fire, emerged stronger. Our daughter, threatened before birth, is healthy and cherished. Our family, both chosen and blood, stands united. The victory isn't just mine or Raj's, it belongs to everyone who who chose love over hate, truth over lies, and protection over persecution. The story that began with a sister's jealousy over a wedding became something much larger, a testament to resilience, the power of chosen family, and the triumph of good over evil. My mother and Sarah remain in prison, their networks dismantled, their influence ended. Meanwhile, we continue building our life, one peaceful day at a time. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I feel a twinge of sadness for the family that could have been. But then Arya laughs, Raj smiles, and I'm surrounded by the warmth of those who chose to stand with us. That's when I realize I haven't lost anything that matters. Instead, I've gained everything. A loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and a family that proved itself through trials most never face. The wedding they tried to overshadow became the foundation of something unshakable. Every challenge they threw at us only made us stronger, more united, more certain of our love. In trying to destroy my happiness, my mother and Sarah ultimately gave me the greatest gift, the knowledge that what Raj and I have built together can withstand anything. I stared at Arya taking her first wobbly steps between the coffee table and couch, my heart swelling with pride. She'd been walking for about a week now, and each attempt was getting more confident. Raj was at work, but I'd already sent him 3 videos that morning. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. The message was simple. Sarah wants to meet Arya. Please consider it. She's changed. It was from her new lawyer. I immediately called my lawyer, who advised against any meeting. The restraining order was still in effect, and Sarah had shown no genuine change beyond her testimony for a lighter sentence. I blocked the number and tried to focus on Arya's playtime, but the message nagged at me. That evening, when I told Raj about it, he was furious. He called our lawyer himself and demanded they send a cease and desist letter to Sarah's legal team. 2 days later, my cousin Preeti called with news from the prison. Sarah had been moved to minimum security after her testimony, but she'd already gotten into trouble. She'd been caught trying to smuggle a phone into her cell, claiming she needed to contact me about something urgent. The guards confiscated it and found she'd been researching custody laws and grandparental rights cases. It seemed she was still plotting with our mother. The following week brought a new development. A woman showed up at Raj's office claiming to be a social worker investigating a complaint about child neglect. She had no proper identification, and when security detained her, she admitted someone had paid her to gather information about our family. She didn't know who. The payment had come through an anonymous online transfer. Police traced it to an internet cafe near the minimum security prison where Sarah was held. We increased security again, this time focusing on Arya's daily routine. Her pediatrician visits were scheduled at random times. We varied which parks we visited, and I stopped posting any photos on social media. It felt like we were going backwards, but protecting Arya was paramount. My mother-in-law suggested we consider moving abroad for a few years until things truly settled. Raj's company had offices in Singapore and Dubai, and a transfer was possible. While we were considering the move, Sharma uncovered something disturbing. My mother had been corresponding with a distant relative I'd never heard of, apparently her cousin who lived in Canada, and this cousin had been wiring money to various accounts in India. When authorities investigated, they found she'd been told I'd stolen the family fortune and left my mother destitute. My mother had been building a network of sympathizers through lies, even from prison. The Canadian cousin, once contacted by police and shown evidence of my mother's crimes, was horrified. She'd sent nearly $30,000 over 6 months, believing she was helping a wronged woman. She immediately stopped all payments and provided authorities with all their correspondence. The letters revealed my mother's delusions had deepened. She genuinely believed Arya belonged to her and that I'd stolen her life. A month before Arya's 2nd birthday, we received notice that Sarah was up for early release. Despite the phone incident, her overall behavior had been deemed acceptable, and with overcrowding in the prison system, she was being considered for house arrest with electronic monitoring. The thought of her being free, even with restrictions, terrified me. Our lawyer filed objections, but we were told the decision wasn't ours to make. During this stressful time, Raj's uncle intercepted another attempt to gather information about us. A man had been asking questions at Arya's playgroup, claiming to be writing an article about modern parenting. The playgroup coordinator, aware of our situation, had immediately contacted us. Security footage showed him taking photos of the building and noting arrival and departure times. He disappeared before police arrived, but we knew the threat was escalating again. The decision about moving abroad was made for us when Raj's company offered him a promotion to head their Singapore office. It was perfect timing. We could leave the country legally, without seeming like we were fleeing, and start fresh where my mother and Sarah had no connections. We began preparing for the move quietly, telling only essential family members. The plan was to leave before Sarah's potential release. 2 weeks into our preparations, I noticed a familiar car parked outside our building multiple times. Sharma investigated and discovered it was registered to one of Sarah's former cellmates, not the one who'd tried to push me, but another woman who'd recently been released. She'd been watching our movements, probably reporting back to Sarah. We filed a police report, but without evidence of illegal activity, they could only warn her to stay away. My mother-in-law threw herself into helping us prepare for Singapore. She researched neighborhoods, schools for when Arya was older, and even found a beautiful apartment through her business connections. She was heartbroken about us leaving, but understood it was necessary. She promised to visit every few months, and we made plans for extended stays during holidays. A week before our planned departure, chaos erupted. Sarah had been released on house arrest, and within hours, she'd cut off her ankle monitor and disappeared. Police launched a manhunt, but she'd clearly planned this. Her lawyer claimed to have no knowledge of her intentions and withdrew from representing her. The restraining order violation alone would send her back to prison, but first they had to find her. We went into immediate lockdown. Security was tripled, and we moved to Raj's family estate again. Our flights were booked for 3 days later, and we just needed to stay safe until then. Arya, thankfully, was too young to understand the tension. She toddled around the estate, chasing butterflies and playing with her cousins, blissfully unaware of the danger. The night before our flight, security cameras caught someone attempting to scale the estate walls. Guards apprehended them. It was Sarah, disheveled and desperate. She'd been hiding in the woods for days, watching the estate. When police arrived, she broke down completely, alternating between begging to see Arya and screaming threats. She claimed Arya was meant to be hers, that she'd raise her as the daughter she never had. The delusion was complete. As police took her away, she shouted something that chilled me. She said our mother had promised her that if she could get Arya, they'd all be a family again in Canada. It seemed my mother had been orchestrating this from prison, using her cousin's money to fund Sarah's escape attempt. The cousin, when contacted contacted confirmed she'd been asked to prepare a room for a granddaughter who would be visiting soon. Sarah's arrest made the local news. The dramatic nature of her escape and capture, combined with the earlier shop vandalism case, painted a picture of a disturbed woman obsessed with her sister's child. Several relatives who'd still been skeptical finally understood the danger we'd been facing. My phone filled with apologetic messages from family members who doubted our fears. We spent our last night in India at the estate, surrounded by security and family. Raj's parents organized a small farewell dinner with only the most trusted relatives. It was bittersweet. We were escaping to safety, but leaving behind the family who'd supported us through everything. Arya played with her cousins, and I tried to memorize every moment, knowing it would be months before we'd see them again. The journey to the airport was orchestrated like a military operation. We used decoy cars, took different routes, and had security at every checkpoint. Even at the airport, plainclothes security officers shadowed us until we passed through immigration. Only when we were seated on the plane, Arya sleeping peacefully in my arms, did I finally breathe freely. Singapore was everything we'd hoped for. The apartment my mother-in-law had found was in a secure building with excellent amenities. Raj threw himself into his new role, while I focused on settling Arya into our new life. We found parks, playgroups, and slowly built a routine free from constant fear. For the first time in years, I could take Arya outside without checking over my shoulder. 3 months into our new life, we received word that my mother had been charged with conspiracy to kidnap and attempted child abduction. The evidence from Sarah's arrest, combined with the money trail from Canada, had given prosecutors enough to add significant time to her sentence. She'd spend at least another decade in prison. The news brought relief but also sadness. This was still my mother, despite everything. Sarah was sentenced to an additional 7 years for escape, violating restraining orders and attempted kidnapping. During her sentencing, she'd apparently shown no remorse, insisting she was trying to save Arya from me. The judge ordered psychiatric treatment as part of her sentence, though reports suggested she refused to cooperate with therapists. Life in Singapore blossomed. Arya adapted quickly, picking up words in multiple languages from her diverse playgroup. Raj's career flourished, and I found work as a consultant, able to balance career and motherhood. We made friends who knew nothing of our past drama, who liked us for who we were, rather than feeling sorry for what we'd endured. My mother-in-law visited every 2 months like clockwork, spoiling Arya with gifts and love. She brought news from home. The family was doing well, our old house had been sold, and the relatives had largely moved on from the drama. Some still asked about reconciliation, but most understood that bridge was permanently burned. She also mentioned that the shop Sarah had vandalized had fully recovered and even expanded, with the owner often asking about our well-being. On Arya's 3rd birthday, we threw a big party with her Singapore friends. As I watched her blow out candles, surrounded by children who'd never know the darkness that preceded her life, I felt profound gratitude. She was growing up safe, loved, and free from the toxic dynamics that had plagued our family. Raj caught my eye across the room and smiled, both of us thinking the same thing. We'd made it. We established new traditions in Singapore: Sunday morning trips to the botanical gardens, evening walks along Marina Bay, celebrating both Hindu and local festivals with equal enthusiasm. Arya grew into a confident, happy child who switched between English, Hindi, and Mandarin with ease. When people asked about grandparents, we simply said they lived far away. It was true enough. The only contact from India regarding my mother or Sarah came through lawyers. Occasional requests for photos of Arya were denied. Appeals for reduced sentences were filed and failed. Each legal document was handled by our team and filed away, never disrupting our daily life. We'd successfully built a wall between our past and present, one that protected Arya while allowing us to heal. 5 years after moving to Singapore, we received news that my mother had died in prison. A heart attack, they said. I felt nothing at first. Then came a wave of grief, not for who she'd become, but for the mother she could have been. Raj held me as I cried, and Arya, now 6, asked why Mama was sad. I told her someone I used to know had gone away forever. She hugged me with her little arms and said she'd make me feel better with her drawings. Sarah was allowed to attend the funeral under heavy guard. Relatives who attended said she looked broken, aged beyond her years. She'd apparently asked about me and Arya, but no one gave her information. After the funeral, she was returned to prison to serve the remainder of her sentence. There was no inheritance to fight over. My mother had died with nothing, having spent everything on her vengeful campaign. We chose not to attend the funeral. Instead, we held our own small ceremony in Singapore, lighting a dia for the complicated woman who'd given me life, but tried to destroy it. Arya asked about the pretty light, and I told her it was for someone who got lost and couldn't find their way back to love. She nodded solemnly, as if she understood more than her years should allow. With my mother gone and Sarah still imprisoned, the threats finally felt truly over. We maintained basic security precautions, but began living more openly. I started sharing occasional photos of our life again, carefully curated but genuine. The relatives who'd stood by us celebrated our happiness from afar, and new connections flourished in our adopted home. When Arya was 7, she asked why we didn't visit India like her friends visited their home countries. We told her we would someday, when she was older. For now, India came to us through her grandparents' visits, through the food we cooked, the festivals we celebrated, and the stories we told. She accepted this with the easy adaptability of children, more interested in her upcoming ballet recital than family history. Raj's career continued to soar, and we bought a beautiful house in Singapore. As we signed the papers, I thought about the castle mansion I'd inherited long ago, now sold to fund our new life. That inheritance had caused so much pain, but ultimately it had given us the means to escape and build something better. Every room in our new home was filled with laughter instead of fear. We had another child when Arya was 8, a boy we named Dev. His birth was peaceful, celebrated by the family we'd chosen and built. No threats, no security concerns, just joy. Arya became a devoted big sister, teaching him words in all her languages and protecting him fiercely. Watching them together, I saw the sibling relationship I'd always wanted with Sarah, but never had. As I finish writing this update, Sarah's sentence is almost complete. We've received word through lawyers that she wants no contact upon release, that she's built a life in prison through vocational programs and wants to start fresh. I hope it's true. I hope she finds peace, but we'll maintain our distance and our new life regardless. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Our story began with a wedding that was meant to be overshadowed and became a testament to resilience. It continued through years of harassment, fear, and flight, but it doesn't end with bitterness or regret. It ends with Arya's laughter echoing through our Singapore home, with Dev taking his first steps, with Raj and I building a life we never imagined but wouldn't trade trade for anything. The relatives who supported us remain in our lives, visiting when they can, video calling weekly. The vendors who stood by us during the wedding drama still send Diwali greetings. The security team that protected us became family friends. Every person who chose right over wrong became part of our story's happier chapters. They proved that family isn't about blood, but about choice, loyalty, and love. Sometimes Arya asks about old photos she finds, wondering about the people in traditional Indian clothes at what looks like a grand celebration. I tell her it was Mama and Papa's wedding, a big party where lots of people came to wish us well. She asks if she was there, and I tell her she was in our hearts, waiting to join our family. It's enough truth for now. Someday, when she's older, we'll share more. But for today, she knows only love, safety, and belonging. Our life in Singapore isn't perfect. No life is. But it's ours, built on our terms, free from toxic manipulation and control. We've learned that sometimes the best response to those who try to destroy your happiness is to build it somewhere they can't reach. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Not as victims, but as survivors who chose to thrive. And in the end, that's the greatest victory of all. A normal, happy life with the people who matter most.